All right, welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode number 66 of the podcast, or you're watching it on YouTube. Today is Sunday, October the 8th, and we had a couple of weeks of layoff because after I returned from the hurricane, I had some personal things going on, and unfortunately had a very close family friend pass away. So I had to go up to New York and spend some time with the family and attend the funeral services and things like that. So I want to go ahead and dedicate this episode to John Rogers, who is my father's best friend. I've known him my whole life, and one of the best guys you could ever know. Give you the shirt off his back kind of guy. He was a big role model for me growing up, being so close to the family. He was like another uncle to me. It was a really, really tough loss, really close with his family. They're all such amazing people. So I'm glad I was able to get back up to New York and spend some time with them. It was unfortunate circumstances, but it was great to see everybody. And, John will be sorely missed. So I'm drinking a Budweiser original for John Rogers today. Usually we're always talking about different craft beers and things, but Budweiser was John's drink. So I'm having one of these for him. Today is also his birthday. So happy birthday, John, wherever you are. He introduced me to a lot of great blues music, really got me into Buddy Guy a lot. So I've been listening to a lot of Buddy Guy, drinking a lot of Budweiser. And, he was a guy who really brightened every room he came into. So I want to dedicate this episode to John Rogers. Cheers, John. Hope to have a drink with you again someday. And unfortunately, we got to start the episode off with some more bad notes. I mean, we had a terrible, terrible event last week in Las Vegas. The worst shooting in American history. An act of terrorism, an act of awful violence. A shooter. I won't even say his name. I purposely. I went out of my way to not know this guy's name because I don't believe that he deserves any recognition for the heinous things that he did, the act of terrorism, the act of I can't even fathom how a human being could do such a terrible thing. I don't really even have the words to describe how awful this event was. So our thoughts definitely go out to the victims and the families of the victims of this tragic shooting out in Las Vegas. So I'd also like to dedicate this episode to them. And I really hope this country bounces back. We've had so many natural disasters lately and just so many negative things going on. And it's really tough to wrap your head around sometimes when you feel like, the whole world is falling apart. But we have to all do our best to kind of stick together, to be good to each other out there. It's really important. I know that's hard to do sometimes because there's a lot of assholes in the world, but we're only on this earth for a short amount of time. So we got to do our best to be good to each other while we're all here and stick together and support each other. And I hope we can all bounce back from all the bad shit that's been going on. And the way I do that is I lean on friends and people in my life. Not always alcohol. Alcohol I reserve for fun things. I don't like to use that as a coping mechanism. I like to lean on the positive people I know in my life, such as my longtime co-host, Jeff the Animal Wilson, who's joining me all the way from New Jersey. And Jeff, I know you've been going through a tough time with things in your life and personal things, and I've been going through a lot of personal things. You and I talk all the time about all the things we've been going through, and I know you make me feel better. Hopefully I do some of the same for you, and I know it makes us both feel better to talk about some MMA. So how are you doing on this Sunday evening, my friend?
Yeah, Bill, we're going through some family stuff, a couple of hard times, but, it's like any fight, man. You got to roll with the punches and keep going, and you got to go the distance. So we're hanging in there. And, Bill, I'm sorry for your loss, man. I know I've told you this through text and in person and stuff, but, hanging out with you and your family last weekend, and your parents are awesome. I love your dad. He was cracking me up with his jokes. Your mom is super sweet. I was trying to help her out with stuff wherever I could, and the way that I was born and raised was, you are the sum of the people you hang out with. So
Yeah.
obviously, any friend of yours is a friend of mine, bud. And I know that John was a great guy. Unfortunately, I didn't get to spend too much time with him, but John, this one's for you, man. We're gonna give you our best analysis. Um, but
Yeah, he would appreciate the shout out. I would text him the episode, and he was a guy that was always so positive too. So I'm glad, he would appreciate the fact that we're trying to do some positive things here and try and uplift people. I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast are probably going through some shit too. Everybody has stuff going on, so hopefully we can be a little bit of an escape for people sometimes. That might be thinking big, but I know it's an escape for you and I to kind of get away from all the mess that's going on in our world, to talk about something we're passionate about, or talk about a couple of things that we're passionate about. So hopefully that helps some people out there. And Jeff, it was great to see you. I wish we could have done an episode while we were there, but that was something positive. You came to my baby shower. So that's definitely some good news. So for those of you who haven't listened to the last couple of episodes, I got a baby on the way. It's a little girl, and she'll be born in January. So I couldn't be more excited about that. That's definitely been, thinking about her arrival has definitely helped me get through some of the going on in the world and in my life. So really looking forward to that. Thanks for coming to the page. Great to see you. I wish we could have done an episode, but at least we got to have a couple of beers together.
Yeah, definitely. And later on, I'm gonna talk to you about some of the ones that I had that I really enjoyed. And yeah, Bill. Unfortunately, though, with the whole Las Vegas thing, dude, I don't know what goes through a person's mind, man. They say that everybody's mind is its own universe, and I can't wrap my head around why someone would want to put more evil into the world. There's enough evil as it is. But like you said, we're out here trying to have a good time, get ourselves a little distracted. So Las Vegas, our thoughts and prayers are with you guys. But last night, Bill, was a little bit more of a positive note for Vegas, because Vegas got invaded last night by some awesome UFC fights.
Yeah.
Awesome card. I was a little skeptical at first, but I think this card was, for lack of a better term, balls to the walls, dude.
Yeah, this card was all over the place. I mean, we had some razor close decisions. We had a couple of draws, and I'm not even mad about that. Usually a draw, you're like, what the fuck? There's no winner in this fight. But as we get down the card, those were two of the best fights. The two draws on the card were two of the best fights on the whole card, in my opinion. But let's start from the top and work our way down. So interim title fight between Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee. And I was out at a bar watching this fight last night, so I couldn't hear too much of the commentary. But I was watching this with a buddy, and I was listening to some Kevin Lee interviews over the past week, and something sounded off about him. In the beginning of the week, he sounded like himself. He was talking trash and everything like that. And then I heard him on a few different podcast interviews, and he sounded just drained. He didn't really want to answer questions. He didn't seem like himself, so I knew something was kind of up with him. And then as soon as he took his shirt off, when he got to the octagon, he had a huge growth coming out of his left pec. I mean, it was like a demon trying to escape his soul. And I looked at it, and as soon as I looked at it, I said to my buddy who I was watching the fights with, I was like, that's a staph infection. And it looks like an untreated staph infection, like a fresh one. So we know he had some issues making weight. He was off by a pound, which you're not granted the 1 pound leniency for a title fight that you normally are. So he weighed in at 156. He had to be cleared by a doctor a second time to come back and make the 155-pound limit. So here's my concern right off the bat. Why was Kevin Lee cleared to fight not once, but twice with clearly an obvious staph infection right on his chest. I mean, I don't know what they do in these medical clearances, but I'm sure they listen to his heartbeat. They must see the guy with his shirt off. I'm someone without any medical training. I mean, I've had some EMT training. I was a firefighter for 6 years. So I do have, a small amount of medical training, but I was able to spot a staph infection 5 beers deep at a bar. Why didn't a doctor pick up on this, and why was he cleared to fight by the Nevada State Athletic Commission is my first question. So, Jeff, did you notice the staph infection, which he then, I rewatched it later at home, and in the post-fight interview, he admitted to Joe Rogan he had a staph infection, and he said, "Oh, I don't want to take anything away from Tony Ferguson." It's like, all right, you might not want to take anything away from him, but apparently you want to give him staph because this is a highly contagious skin infection. So what were your thoughts on this first and foremost, Jeff?
Yeah, dude, I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, what the hell, dude? First off, it looks gross. Second off, dude, if you've got a staph infection, you should not be fighting. I'm sorry, but no, that's a big no. Kevin Lee, I'm sorry, dude, but that is a dick move. And, like, now there's a good chance Tony Ferguson is going to wake up with staph in a few days. I mean, they were rolling around in each other's sweat, exchanging body fluids. Dude,
yeah, bleeding on each other.
Yeah, I mean, oh, God. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, dude. Like, among the things that Kevin Lee did in the fight, this is unacceptable, man. I'm super upset about this. He should not have been in that octagon last night.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've had some experience with staph. Now, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically a bacterial infection that gets in your skin. And if it goes untreated, it can basically put a hole in your body. It basically eats through your skin and flesh. So if you don't get on antibiotics quick, it could actually kill you. It's very common in gyms, especially mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu gyms, where, people are sweating and people might have open cuts, and you don't realize it, and you get some bacteria, and you don't clean it out thoroughly after you train, or maybe you do, and it just happens to stick. There's a thousand different ways you can contract it, but if you have it, like in the past, I've had it before. I stayed away from training. For the safety of my training partners and for the safety of myself, because if I give it to somebody else and then they could give it back to me later, you got to take care of that shit. Luckily, this was the main event, so there was no other fights afterwards, so there was no chance of anybody else contracting it. Hopefully, they burned the octagon, but I don't know what this says for the. I don't know what this says.
You they burned the octagon.
That's what I would do. I would burn that shit. But I don't know what how this looks on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, because he had to go through a second physical examination. I'm sure they tested his blood work. Like, are they not looking for this? And if not, they definitely should be going forward because he shouldn't be fighting with that. And it's something that definitely affects your endurance, which you don't want to have anything affecting your endurance if you're getting in the octagon with Tony Ferguson, who has one of the biggest gas tanks maybe in the history of the sport, if not the biggest. I mean, the guy has insane cardio. I mean, he's pretty much legendary for his training sessions where he'll train for like 6 hours without taking a break, according to Eddie Bravo and some other sources. And so that's something I noticed while I was watching the fight. And Kevin Lee came out really strong. It was obvious he was trying to end the fight quickly because he knew that his endurance was going to be an issue with the staph infection, since he obviously knew about it. And he also looked very tense. He was clenched up. And whenever you're tense, that's going to drain your gas tank so much quicker because, he was trying to throw everything into every punch and knock Tony Ferguson out early, which, he was doing pretty well in those early rounds. He was able to take Tony Ferguson down at will, which was very impressive. They come from the same wrestling pedigree. They both wrestle at the same university. And we've never really seen Tony Ferguson get taken down so easily. We've seen him get taken down in fights before, but never at will like that, and multiple times. But subsequently, he wound up getting submitted in a triangle choke And it seemed like he had just kind of gassed out and he was looking for a way out of there because he kind of melted into that triangle choke and he didn't really defend it too much. So it kind of seemed like he was done. I think between the staff and just exhausting himself, he had run himself into the ground at a much quicker pace than you would want to do against Tony Ferguson. So what were your thoughts on the actual fight itself, Jeff?
Yeah, dude. So in the first round, Kevin Lee coming out super strong, landing some hard punches, and, you know, getting the takedown, like you said. And, dude, I was really disappointed at the end of this first round because at the end of the round, Kevin Lee is dropping just bombs. He's got Tony Ferguson mounted. He's dropping huge bombs. And then when the bell rings, he throws a punch after it rings. And then he was going for a second one as Herb Dean pulled him off. And, you know, dude, I was super pissed at this just because, one, you know what you're doing, dude. Once you go for one punch, that's one thing, but he went for two. Luckily, Herb Dean stepped in, and I was a little disappointed that Herb Dean didn't take a point away, which at the end of the day doesn't matter because it was a finish in the third round. But, you know, that if they'd have gone the distance, that would have played a huge factor, man. And I think Kevin Lee, he's been in there enough where he knows the rules. He should have gotten a point taken away because, honestly, I was looking at that round as a 10-8.
Yeah, and, you know, Kevin Lee, as we know, is a very emotional fighter. And this was personal. I mean, these guys had wrestled before in college. They didn't wrestle at the same time because Kevin Lee's 25, Tony Ferguson's 33. But while Kevin Lee was getting started with his wrestling career, Tony Ferguson would come back to the wrestling gym and kind of work in with the younger guys as an alumni. And, you know, so they had grappled before. And then, you know, they had that altercation after Kevin Lee's last fight when Tony Ferguson was on the sports desk for Fox. So there was some history here. There was some bad blood. There was a lot of trash talk. He was very emotional and I think just pissed off at the fact that he got this staph infection and he knew it was draining his gas tank a lot quicker than he would prefer. And, you know, in the grand scheme of things, he's probably not going to get a rematch with Tony Ferguson. You know, when you get finished like that, it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are. You're usually not granted a rematch when you get finished in such a fashion. But moving on from the actual fight itself, which I thought was great, but I kind of saw how it was going to go because I just, you know, I had kind of predicted that Kevin Lee would run out of gas and he would either get TKO'd or submitted at some point just because he couldn't keep up with the pace of Tony Ferguson. And that's exactly what happened. He finished him with a nice triangle. Granted, like I said, Kevin Lee kind of melted into it, but, you know, credit to Tony Ferguson. He took out a really tough guy who he didn't have to take a fight with because Kevin Lee is not ranked as high as Tony Ferguson is. Tony Ferguson was ranked number 2. Supposedly, Khabib Nurmagomedov was offered this fight and turned it down because he's not going to be ready to fight until December. He's now calling Tony Ferguson out. Tony Ferguson called out Conor McGregor at the end of his fight. I don't really see that fight happening between Tony Ferguson and Conor McGregor, and I'll tell you why. Tony Ferguson, as great of a fighter as he is, I think 11-fight win streak and some awesome finishes and everything like that, he's not really a marketable fighter. He's a little bit strange when he gets on the microphone. He doesn't really sell fights too well. I think he knows what he wants to say, but there's some kind of disconnect between his brain and his mouth, and he can't really get it out too well. So he can have some kind of like prefabricated statements. You know, he said defend or vacate to Conor McGregor, and that's kind of what he's been saying. That's been his mantra on Twitter and things like that. But at the end of the day, let's face it, he's not a marketable fighter. The marketable fight for Conor McGregor, who at the end of the day is going to make the calls, like it or not, you know, love him or hate him, Conor McGregor, you know, runs the show here. Marketable fight between Conor and Nate Diaz. Now, I know a lot of hardcore fans will say, well, Nate Diaz doesn't deserve a title shot, and Tony Ferguson's the interim champion. You guys got to forget all that. For the sake of marketing, you got to remember these things are going to be marketed towards the casual fans who only know the big names. And they know Conor McGregor, they know Nate Diaz. The casual fan doesn't give a fuck that Tony Ferguson is the interim champion. The casual fan is going to shell out $60 to watch Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz in a trilogy. So that's my prediction as to what's going to happen. Whether or not Tony Ferguson is holding an interim belt, I don't think that matters. So you guys heard it here first. The next fight that'll be made will be Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz as a trilogy. And it'll be for the title. And then Tony Ferguson will have to fight the winner of that. And he'll have to sit on the shelf, hopefully not another 11 months like he had been. But that's what I see happening, just because he didn't cut the right promo at the end of his fight. And that's the way I see it going down. What do you think, Jeff? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you, man. I don't see Ferguson drawing too many casual fans, but I will say this, man. His trash talk is the one thing I'll argue with you on this is I think his trash talk is a little on point, man. I feel like in the last interview that I saw, at least between him and Kevin Lee, he was tearing Kevin Lee apart. You could see he was getting frustrated a little bit, and at the end of last night's fight, he yells out, "Come on, McNuggets!" So it just made me laugh. But yeah, I do agree with you.
It was a funny spot, but at the end of the day, they're not going to put that in a commercial, in a pay-per-view. Like, they're going to rerun the Nate Diaz. I'm not surprised, motherfucker. Like, that's going to get a lot more hits than McNuggets. Like, McNuggets was funny in the moment, but I feel like for marketing value, the Nate Diaz fight is the way they're going to go. I don't necessarily agree. I think Tony Ferguson deserves to be the undisputed champ, but money talks and bullshit walks. So, I mean, unless he figures out a way to become a little bit more marketable, that's the fight that's going to happen. But go ahead. I'm sorry I cut off your point there, Jeff.
Yeah, no worries, dude. But yeah, I gotta agree with you on that, though. I think it's gonna be Diaz McGregor 3, and I think that even for us as more hardcore fans, dude, I'm excited for this, man. I want to see if McGregor can come up with another game plan to beat Diaz. Diaz, obviously the bigger guy, but if Diaz drops some weight, he might be a little bit faster. He might be a little smoother looking. So I think there's a lot of variables that are gonna make that such a good fight that I think the UFC essentially has no choice but to book that fight.
Yeah, and that'll probably be around the New Year's time frame. They usually do a big card around New Year's weekend. So that's my prediction there. That's how I see that going down. And if in the meantime we can get Tony Ferguson versus Khabib, if Khabib can actually make lightweight, which I doubt he can anymore, I think he should just move up to welterweight. He's at the point in his development where lightweight's no longer an option. But if he can make that weight, man, that's a fight I would love to see. Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov, make it the double interim championship. I don't give a fuck what you call it, really. That's just a fight I want to see. I'm one who wants to see the best matchups. So let's do a tournament kind of thing. We'll do Conor. I mean, strip everybody of the title for all I care. It doesn't really matter to me. Do Conor and Nate, and the winner fights the winner of. And let's have that. I think everybody will be satisfied with those fights. Those all sound like awesome fights, whatever combination it ends up being. If it ends up being Nate and Khabib for the undisputed championship, great. If it ends up being Conor, Tony Ferguson, great. Any combination of those guys, I'm tuning in for sure.
Yeah, dude, definitely. I agree with you on that. But another funny thing that Tony Ferguson said was, I don't want to fight someone who eats too much tiramisu on Tuesdays.
Dude, Khabib's going to be he's going to have to live down that tiramisu thing for the rest of his career, especially if he ever misses weight again. Weight was Ray Borg. And, you got to give him credit. I mean, he put up a fight, but it was basically the Mighty Mouse show the entire fight. Borg got a couple of takedowns. He might have landed a couple of clean shots here and there, but for the most part, he wasn't able to do anything to Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse did what he always does. He wore his opponent down to the late rounds and got an armbar finish in spectacular fashion, by the way. It was like a suplex into an armbar, which was just an awesome finish. I didn't see who won the bonuses, but I'm sure he got a. If he didn't, bias from Dana White or whomever makes those decisions. But really, an awesome finish by Demetrious Johnson in what was a very kind of predictable for the rest of it. So spectacular finish, definitely highlight reel. But the rest of it, no surprises there. What were your thoughts on this fight, Jeff?
Yeah, dude. This was a snoozer up until that happened, though, man. Demetrious Johnson ended up saving his own fight because I was falling asleep while watching it. But, dude, I got to give him credit, man. He just added a really nice highlight to his highlight reel. And, this was something out of a video game. Dude, he picked him up, dropped him, and then, like, midair starts getting his leg over the face and just leans back at the end. But, Bill, this annoyed me as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He put him in a shitty armbar because, he was getting his hips up. That's great. But if it's not working, he should have probably tweaked the angle a little bit and probably gotten the arm over his hip and, like, leaned a different way. Because at first the arm was being bent, but it wasn't being hyperextended. And, like, he had to, like, twist and jerk around a lot, if you notice that in the highlight. So I thought it was an okay armbar. I think his armbar still needs work, though. But, nice highlight for him. I still, good for him that he broke the record. But we've talked about this before. Besides Joseph Benavidez and who's the other guy? John Dodson. He doesn't have a lot of names on the guys he's beat, man. For me, it's still Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I mean, he has no former champions on his resume. I mean, this is a long debate we could have, and I agree with you. I think his jiu-jitsu is not that great, and I may get some criticism for saying that, but basically what he does is he wears guys down until they can't defend submissions anymore, which is very common. I mean, he submitted black belt Wilson Hayes. If they were to grapple in a jiu-jitsu match, I don't see that going the same way. But because of the pace he puts on and the way he executes his MMA strategy, he's able to wear guys out until they can no longer defend submissions, and he's able to get away with a little bit. I think we give him a pass on this one since he transitioned to it in the middle of a suplex, which was pretty fucking phenomenal. But yeah, I think Silva, one of the greatest of all times, is not how many title defenses he had in a row. I couldn't have told you that number at any point a couple of weeks ago. If you asked me, like, why is Anderson Silva one of the greatest of all times, I wouldn't have said, oh, because he had 10 title defenses in a row. I would have said because he fought anybody, anytime, anywhere. He fought guys he didn't necessarily want to fight. He gave Chael Sonnen a title shot when he didn't necessarily deserve it, and took a beating from him for 4.5 rounds, submitted him with, like, I don't know, 25 seconds left, and then gave him a rematch after getting his ass beat for most of the fight and finishing it. He moved up to 205 on several occasions, fought some monsters there like James Irvin, F. Bonner. He fought Daniel Cormier, who's one of the baddest motherfuckers on planet Earth, on 3 days' notice just to save a card. That's a real fighter there. And when Mighty Mouse declined fighting TJ Dillashaw because he said he wanted to break his record and he didn't know if Dillashaw would make weight, and he kept talking about how this record would make him the best fighter. The best fighters of all time don't call themselves the best fighters of all time. You'll never hear Fedor say, like, oh, I was the best fighter because I won this many pride fights in a row. He's in that put. He's there, but for me, I just need to see more evidence. I need to see him fight some bigger names. So if Cody Garbrandt drops down and Demetrious Johnson is able to beat him, or if Demetrious moves up into some super fights and is able to beat guys there, then I'm willing to entertain this debate. But until then, I don't really see an argument that can put him at the greatest of all time, just given the competition he's faced. I think it's very similar to the hype surrounding Ronda Rousey. There was just nobody else at the time she was coming up in her division who was on her skill level. And for the flyweight division, I think that's the same case. There's just nobody there yet. I think there could be one day, or maybe they'll get rid of that division altogether. But I need to see a little bit more evidence. And I'm kind of tired of the pound for pound talk anyway. It doesn't really matter. I thought he had a great performance and a spectacular finish, and let's leave it at that. I don't think we need to go to his legacy or anything like that. Congratulations to him on the most title defenses in a row. Awesome. I guess that's cool if you're into statistics. I'm not personally. I like great fights and I like great fighters, and let's leave it at that. I hope he has a great fight in his next showing, and he can move on to some bigger matchups, and he can get paid because he is a talented guy. So the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, had to pull out of his fight with Fabricio Verdum last night. I was actually really looking forward to that one. Walt Harris steps up and steps into an armbar a minute into the fight. Once it went to the ground and Verdum was on top, just from the way Walt Harris was reacting, you could kind of tell this one was over. Not too much to say about this one. Verdum took his back, and Walt Harris moved too far to one side, and Verdum just snatched up an armbar. It was pretty awesome, pretty textbook. He didn't even have it that deep. He had the armbar like right at the elbow joint, which usually you want to be under the shoulder. But I think Walt Harris just kind of panicked there. Credit to him for stepping up on short notice against such a highly ranked opponent like Verdum. But hopefully we could still see Verdum versus Derek Lewis. That would be great. But any thoughts on this one, Jeff?
Yeah, dude, you were talking about how Anderson Silva took a fight with Daniel Cormier on 3 days' notice. Walt Harris took this fight on like 3 hours' notice against one of the deadliest submission guys, probably at least in the heavyweight division, but definitely in the UFC as a whole. Yeah, credit to him for taking this fight, man, but not much to say. I mean, I don't know who this guy Walt Harris is. I think this was his debut, and he was verdoomed from the beginning.
Yeah, verdoomed. That might have been a contender for the for the name of the episode. Already chosen at the end, but before that, newcomers Mara Borea and Kalindra Faria. Borea just dominant in this one. Took down her opponent and submitted her with a rear naked choke. A little over halfway through the first round. Very impressive performance, I thought. Great display of jiu-jitsu. Any thoughts on that one, Jeff?
Yeah, dude, and I know you were at a bar. Maybe you couldn't hear too much of the commentary after, but when Barella won, she let out this monstrous scream. It sounded like an animal being killed or like tortoises having sex. I don't know what to compare that scream to, but it was the scariest part of this fight, Bill. But
yeah, I didn't really hear it too well, but I saw it. I mean, it was a very primal looking sound she was letting out. So she's a beast, man. She's fucking shredded, and you know, she'll be a force in that division for sure. I mean, she made that look easy. I want to move on to the two draws on the card, which I said earlier, I thought these were two of the best fights on the card. So we had Beneil Dariush and Evan Dunham, and then we had Lando Venata and Bobby Green. I wouldn't mind seeing both of these fights again. As soon as they were over, I hate to keep like tooting my own horn here about the predictions I was making, but as soon as both of these fights were over, I said I would score that fight a draw for both of them. With Dariush and Dunham, Dunham took a fucking beating in the first round. I would say it was a 10-8 round easily for Beneil Dariush. Almost finished him a couple of times, almost knocked him out. And Dunham came back and won the second and third, which really speaks to the toughness of Evan Dunham. So with a 10-8 round for Dariush in the first and 10-9s for Dunham in the second and third, for those of you who are minded, that equals a draw. I can't think of the math off the top of my head, but yeah, I scored that one a draw easily. And then Lando Venata and Bobby Green, I saw Venata dominating the first round. but he had a point deducted. So if you scored that 10-9, it becomes 9-9. Then Bobby Green won the second round, and then Venata came back and won the third round. Awesome fucking fight. And I kind of knew that would be one of the best fights of the night when I saw it on the card. If we had done an episode in the last couple of weeks, I probably would have said that on the show. The only argument I can see for that fight not being a draw is if you gave Venata a 10-8 round in the first, and then he gets a point deducted, and it becomes 9-8, and then he wins by 1 point. So hopefully you guys are all following along with everything I'm saying here. I know I'm blowing through this kind of quick, but what were your thoughts on these two draw fights, Jeff? And are you with me that these were two of the best fights on the card, or did you see it a little differently?
Unfortunately, I did not watch any of the prelims, Bill, but now I'm going to go back and watch Venata versus Green, definitely. But, yeah, I thought Demetrious versus Dunham, dude, like, as soon as that fight ended, I was like, dude, I don't know who won. I definitely had the first round for Demetrious. Maybe I thought it was like a 10-8, and then Dunham, I was just so impressed with his comeback. I kind of wanted to give it to him, but you can't. Like, it was just, they beat the crap out of each other. It was awesome. But I just remember thinking at the end of that fight, one, I don't know who won, and two, that's how you kick off a pay-per-view.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, it was awesome. Definitely go back and watch the Venata Bobby Green fight. I mean, it was everything you would hope for from a fight between those two. Those are two fucking animals. And Dariush and Evan Dunham, I would definitely like to see them in a rematch. I mean, you kind of have to. They're both kind of like mid-ranked fighters, so you might as well run it back and see who comes away with it. Evan Dunham's just a tough son of a bitch, man. He took such a thrashing in that first round, and the way he came back, he still looked fresh in that third round. It was unbelievable, and I think Dariush couldn't believe it either, and that's kind of why he couldn't really react. I think maybe he blew out his gas tank trying to finish Dunham in that first round. I'll give you a couple of others, Jeff. John Moraga basically stole the soul of Magomed Ibulatov. I know I'm saying that wrong, but we're pressed for time here. And then Brad Tavares beat the crap out of Talis Latis. And I'll give you one more. The Cody Stamann and Tom Duquesnoy was a split decision, but a great back-and-forth fight. I know you didn't see the prelims, but any thoughts on any of those fights and very rough recaps that I just provided for you, Jeff?
Definitely want to check out Tavares versus Latis. Those are two awesome fighters. Definitely want to check out John Moraga's fight. I think with a couple more fights under his belt, he'll be ready to KO Demetrious Johnson.
Ooh, bold statement.
Yeah, I don't mean that. I think you give him a couple more fights. I think he can give Demetrious Johnson a little bit of a task. Other than that, I think the only other fight I want to check out on the undercard is Venata versus Bobby Green. Those three really catch my eye.
Yeah, for sure. Magomed, who John Moraga knocked out, he was a heavy favorite. He was 14-0 coming into this fight, and Moraga just fucking beat the brakes off him, knocked him out cold in the first round. So great performance by him, great notching. But not for a couple weeks, so we'll wait to break down future cards. I know you're going to be attending UFC 217, so we'll get into that one pretty deep. That's a pretty stacked card, and I'm looking forward to your analysis of seeing that live. I'm pretty jealous you're going to Madison Square Garden to check that one out, Jeff. Kind of MMA stuff. You want a few cards we didn't touch on because we've been off for a couple of weeks, and there's been some news we haven't talked about. Anything kind of top of your mind, Jeff?
There was a good Bellator card with Benson Henderson, but unfortunately I had to miss that one. It's been a little chaotic the last couple of weeks. But Bill, anything that you kind of thought stood out to you or anything like that in the couple of weeks we missed?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching, but unfortunately, I was like running around. The Bellator card was great. Roy Nelson had an awesome fight on there. It was really close fight with Javi Alves, I want to say. His name's escaping me right now, but really awesome heavyweight matchup. Roy Nelson's Bellator debut. You can check that one out if you didn't see it. And yeah, Benson Henderson and Patricky Pitbull went at it. I can't even remember right now. The last couple of weeks have been a blur, Jeff, to be honest. And it's been a combination of a lot of alcohol and a lot of bad shit happening. And I know you can relate to that. But what have you been sipping on as of late, my friend? I know we had a couple of beers together last week, but anything else interesting I don't know about?
Yeah, unfortunately this week I haven't even had a chance to just sit down and have a beer. That's how crazy it's been. But while we were at your baby shower, Bill, I had this awesome beer. I can't stop thinking about it. It's called Samuel Adams 20 Pounds of Pumpkin. It's a fall beer. Dude, it tasted like a pumpkin latte. I was like, and I didn't feel like a white chick drinking it, so it was awesome.
It wouldn't have been a bad thing if you did feel like a white chick, Jeff. I mean, every now and then, you got to go a little bit basic, bitch. And get a little pumpkin spice in your life, man. It's making me feel a little manlier drinking my Budweiser over here. But, I've said this before. I am a fan of the pumpkin beers. For whatever reason, they get a bad rap in it. They're seen as a little bit feminine, but fuck it. If you like it, drink it. And that's how we've been since day one on this show, and drink it however you want. You want to shoot it, shoot it. You want to take it in a butt funnel, take it in a butt funnel. We're supportive of every kind of drinking lifestyle here, Jeff. And I think the listeners know that by now. So I'm drinking a Budweiser for John Rogers. So I ask all you listening at every time you have a Budweiser to think of the name John Rogers, even if you didn't know him. And if you did, think of him anyway every time you have a Budweiser, because it's an awesome tribute. And that's what I'll be doing for the rest of my life every time I have a Budweiser. So happy birthday, John. Cheers to you. Again, this episode is dedicated to you. If you'd like to get a hold of Jeff on social media, you can get him at animal_Wilson on Twitter. And Jeff loves interacting with people who listen to the show, so please do reach out to him. And by now, you all know how to get a hold of me. It's at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere else on the social media, or you can go to MMAonTheRocks.com and you can send me a message that way. I'm more than happy to have a debate or have a conversation or get some great drink recommendations. So with that, any closing thoughts, Jeff?
I got nothing, Bill. Just, positive vibes and good thoughts going out to everybody who's been affected by Vegas or the natural disasters that have been going on, or, any family stuff you guys might be going through. Like we've said, Bill and I, we're in the struggle with you guys. So good vibes out to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Be good to each other out there. If you have the means, please get on and donate to victims of the Las Vegas shooting and victims of all the natural disasters that have been going on through the Red Cross or whatever, whichever credible charity donation site you happen to come across. So if you have the means, please do so. Until next week, hopefully next week. I know we've been taking a couple of weeks off. But until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye. Thanks for listening.